Texas In Depth begins right after the break.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Next week, state leaders will take on some big agencies to make them work better for you, and Texas children will head back to school. But first, heavy rains in Louisiana and Texas showed once again the power of nature. Those disasters cost all of us millions, and as our Phil Prazen shows us, the state's disaster accounts are dwindling.
Another storm comes in and our local emergency workers put their lives on the line, funded by our local tax dollars.
So their personnel to respond, that fuels the fire trucks, all that stuff just gets paid up front.
Jacob Durr from Austin's Homeland Security and Emergency Management Office says county judges and local leaders will then ask the state and federal government for money to pay them back for the cost to save lives and cleanup once the storm has passed.
Fire trucks that were damaged or bridges that were washed out.
But money is running low from the state. Out of a total of nearly $330 million for the state's Department of Emergency Management, $89 million was earmarked for storm cleanup. But that money's already half gone. The budget has to last until September 1st, 2017, and the state is already rejecting requests.
Sometimes people argue that government can't do anything good. Well, we want government to do good when it comes to disaster planning and to helping clean up and get us back on our feet.
Austin Senator Kirk Watson says this is a symptom of a larger problem. State lawmakers often leave the planning and funding of disaster plans to cities and counties. It took last-minute negotiations for him to push through $7 million more last session, while much of Austin was underwater.
Elected public officials are going to have to be honest that we need to put that money aside.
And as we enter hurricane season, the need isn't going away. Phil Prazen, KXAN News.
For some perspective on how little $50 million buys you in a disaster, check out these numbers from FEMA. The agency picks up a lot of the bill. In the April flooding, FEMA gave out $119 million statewide. And after floods last October, the total bill was more than $65 million, a little more than half to individuals, the rest to local governments. By the way, the federal money can take a little while to help. The city of Austin, for example, is still waiting on federal funds from floods in 2013. Making the Texas state government work better for you. A look ahead at the meeting that can have a huge impact on everything from your dentist office and pharmacy to the courtroom and oil field. Next on State of Texas. Welcome back to State of Texas. We're looking ahead to this week's big headlines. On Tuesday, the presidential race comes to Austin as Republican candidate Donald Trump holds a rally at the Travis County Expo Center. Also on Tuesday, the Senate's Higher Education Committee heads back to class to talk about tuition at colleges in Texas. But on Monday, we'll get a full report on some major parts of the state government. The Sunset Advisory Commission will review agencies like the Board of Dental Examiners and the Maine Oil and Gas Production Regulator. It's a way to cut costs and improve state government performance. Representative Larry Gonzalez of Round Rock chairs that commission. Chairman, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you've been on Appropriations Committee for a while now, and you've had to deal with a lot of the financial issues that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming session. One of them is school finance. I know that this is something that just seems like it's never ending, and now we have the Supreme Court ruling that says it's constitutional, but it still needs some tweaks. What do you think?
Right. I think you're going to see the House Representatives try to address it. We had a bill last session. Chairman Jimmy Don Aycock put forth a proposal, and I want to try that again. I want to look at it, and I want to see if there's something we can do with or without a court order. I think it's important that we get it right, and getting it right is something that I think the people of Texas expect us to do, so I want to look at it.
Your wife is a teacher, correct?
She is an associate principal.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Just get the upgrade, right?
That's right.
All right, and you have children. I mean, what kind of things do you guys talk about when it comes to school funding and your household?
My household is very, I think, a lot alike so many others, but also different. I have a daughter who is AP, and she's in gifted and talented and doing wonderful things like her mama, and she's fantastic. So we're seeing public ed through that eyes. I've also got a son who is getting full sped services, so I'm seeing public ed through those eyes. So I have got one kid each, a junior and a freshman, and we're seeing them through very different kind of lenses right now. My wife's entire career was in special ed, so we see it professionally, we see it as a mom and dad, I see it legislatively. So I get a pretty good look just within my household of how we treat all of public education. And it's a fantastic look that I get. And as daddy, also, we get to look at legislation to see in real time how it's affecting my kid and other kids just like him in Texas.
And now you've got this new challenge in the role as chairman of the Sunset Commission. You guys have had a lot to deal with this year already, and I know this upcoming week you're going to be talking a lot about what's happening with the State Dental Board. We had so much stuff that was talked about with the Daisy Lynn Torres death and all the fallout there. What are we going to be expecting this coming week?
I think we're going to be expecting what we thought we had all along, which was a regulated and inspected dental practice of anesthesia. I think that's what we thought we had, and it's surprising that we don't, maybe to the degree that we all felt that we did. So the Sunset staff has some pretty good recommendations that we're going to be talking about. We're actually voting on them, and how we're going to proceed with that. But I think the expectations for the committee, quite frankly, just put us where we thought we already were. And I was shocked, as many others, to find out that we didn't have the safety nets for the health and safety of Texans that we thought we did. So we need to correct that.
And you're looking at agencies throughout the rest of the year ahead of the session in January, and I know that there's some big ones coming up. Where do you expect many changes are coming from with other agencies?
Well, when you have the Railroad Commission, which regulates a global economic boom for us, which pays a lot of our bills, the severance tax pays many of our bills. That's significant. What they do is significant to our economy and affects the aforementioned education funding. That is a revenue stream for us. That's going to be a big one. We're having that discussion here very soon. TxDOT is one more we're going to be discussing as well. That obviously has a huge impact on mobility, congestion, the safety of our Texans on the road. So we're going to be looking at that as well. The particular place I'm in as chairman of the Sunset Commission, as well as subcommittee chairman for Articles 6, 7, and 8, I also appropriate these agencies. So the 24 that are being discussed for Sunset Review, I, with my committee, appropriate 17 of them. So I get a really good look at not just the agency function, but I'm also on the appropriating side. So I'm seeing this through two lenses right now, which is really good for me, because I understand there are some recommendations that are fantastic. I may or may not be able to pay for them, though. So I'm looking at it from that angle as well.
All right, Chairman, always glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
It's time to head back to class, but how ready are Texas students? We tackle the big education debates next on State of Texas. A new school year is about to begin, but how prepared are Texas students? A study from the E3 Alliance found just 41% of Central Texas children were ready for kindergarten. That's a 12% drop from the year before. So, what can we do? Our roundtable of experts may have some answers. Susan Dawson from the E3 Alliance and Kia Collier from the Texas Tribune. Welcome.
Thank you.
So that statistic, that's pretty startling when you think about kids getting ready for school.
It is very startling. We've been tracking the most comprehensive study of kindergarten readiness in the state of Texas for the last 6 years. And for many years, despite of the growth of children in poverty, despite state budget cuts, it's very stable until this year. And a very precipitous drop is what we saw, which causes huge concern, not only for those students who are in school now and not ready to succeed at the levels we need them to, but also for the students coming behind them in this year and future years.
And so much about getting kids ready for kindergarten is starting them early beforehand. With pre-K is such an important topic right now with the legislature and for parents and schools across the state. You've been covering that recently. What have you been finding out?
I have, yeah. Sort of the political backdrop to this is that pre-K has become sort of a sticking point between moderate and conservative Republicans. Conservative Republicans aren't completely sold on the benefits of pre-K, and that was interesting because last year Governor Greg Abbott announced early education pre-K as his top legislative priority and really pushed this high-quality grant program. And there was some question about whether it would, pass. Some grassroots advisors to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick sent Patrick a letter opposing Abbott's plan, describing it as godless, socialistic, that kind of thing. So there was some question about whether it would pass or what margins. It ended up passing overwhelmingly, but as we heard at this hearing of the Senate Education Committee on Monday, some senators are still just like really skeptical and not sold on all the studies and statistics that show that pre-K really helps prepare kids for kindergarten.
Yeah, and it seems like everyone wants to make sure that things are working, and that's one of the things that your group has really worked on. I know Martin Middle School was a big success for your your group. I mean, what have you been doing to help other schools in the Austin School District?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, we do have strong evidence here in Central Texas that pre-K is hugely important, not only for students being ready, but for them succeeding in reading and math at 3rd grade and beyond. But it's not, you can't stop there. The data also shows that we're really failing our students in middle school, and far too many students get lost in middle school with 7 different teachers and 7 different classes and hormones and lockers. And so we have many schools that are struggling. Martin Middle School is a great example. It's been on the state's improvement required list for 3 years in a row, meaning it was on the way to closure. Last year, we started a program in partnership with AISD in Martin Middle School and now 5 middle schools in Austin called Raise Up Texas, and we're completely transforming the teaching and learning process in Martin. And now, for the first time in 4 years, they're off that improvement required list, and they're doing wonderfully.
That's awesome. We just got a few seconds left. I just want to know, what do you think we can expect for school finance now that the Supreme Court has said it's constitutional, but you got a lot of work to do?
Yeah, I mean, they sort of left it up to lawmakers, right? So that's a pretty open question at this point, I would say. You have the House considering some kind of technical, mechanical, but really important and big fixes. And then you have the Senate looking at things like funding schools based on academic performance rather than, per student attendance, which is a pretty controversial concept among school officials.
And a big change.
Yeah, a big change. Historically, schools have been funded based on a per student basis from the state. So
certainly a lot to talk about before the next session.
And it's coming up quickly.
I know, right? Thank you so much for being with us, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Remember, we return to our normal time next weekend, Sunday morning at 8:30. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.